Imperial Knights. How a High King is Forged. From Boy to Man. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, forces, and faces of the Warhammer 40K setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. Today, by request, we revisit the story of House Heinrich, the continuation of a tale begun in my previous entry titled Imperial Knights, the greatest and oldest military order in the galaxy, where we explored the origins and incredibly rich history of the knightly orders. In short, their genesis. One of my best videos to date, I am reliably told. Hence, I feel it only appropriate to develop this work into an ongoing story. But, as always, it should show much of the setting, allowing us to explore the Warhammer universe via this medium. Story segments with explanatory elements will follow, so let us be about it. The story of High King Francois Franklin Heinrich, the 912th of his house. Through the eyes of a child. Stood in the throne room, the boy was surrounded by pomp and grandeur. A score of guards in armor that was effective, despite it being ceremonial, stood around the walls and before the closed doors. The boy looked up at a man on a throne. His father. A god he could barely remember. A legend now sitting before him. This was the first time since the king's return. Prince Francois was only 7, yet he had already cultivated a haughty air and upturned nose, while the High King John Heinrich the 911th had been away on campaign. The king barely recognized the baby he had held in his arms so many moons ago. He scowled at the servant who loitered behind the prince, eyes averted on the ground. The sister familiar's tutor, the woman who had raised the prince more than the child's own mother. Queen Heinrich had been left to run the household and estates, had scant time to spend with her progeny, and the king had been away for 5 long years. High King John could never regret the years away, bringing justice to the enemies of humanity. But he now counted the cost none had ever mentioned. His son looked upon the world with someone else's eyes, someone else's perspectives. He might be back for only a year, probably less, but the High King decided there and then he would intervene immediately. He delayed the meeting due to never-ending pressures on his time. Ceremonials, board meetings, oaths renewed and new ones given. Yet this was his first encounter with his son and heir, Francois Frederick Heinrich, away from the maddening crowds. He did not like what he saw, and he swore to himself there and then he would find the boy a proper mentor. But right here, right now, the boy had been discovered acting in a most unbecoming way. The king had been told of his infraction, and all expected him to send the boy to his mother or to his room. None expected the summons for a private audience. The king looked over steepled fingertips, then dropped them and sat forward, ever so slightly. His face was now more visible in the morning light, his countenance stern, eyes piercing. The prince instinctively took a step backwards. Fear flashed across his face. The king intoned, "I hear report that you, my son, have been taunting the other children. One might go so far as to define it as bullying them." The High King leant back as he continued, "You must never think you are better than those you serve." The prince looked confused for a second. Then his true face came back, and he snapped. "But I am your son. I will be High King. I am better than them, all of them. Who do we serve when all take our commands?" As soon as he had finished, the boy then shrank backwards as his father rose from the throne and slowly walked down the king's staircase toward him, the substantial size difference becoming more real with each step. He now stood above Prince Francois and glared down at him. "And yet, you will never choose your own wife. You will never be free to change your role or responsibilities. You will never escape your destiny. They can. We cannot. You cannot. Because both you and I are servants." The little boy did not shudder or quake, but he did look up with wide, glistening eyes. To the child, it was as if the God Emperor himself was chiding him. The High King continued. "We are the lords of House Heinrich, but we serve our vassals, the world, the Imperium, and every human who resides therein. We are tasked with sacrificing what we wish for all around us. We serve the God Emperor and the human race. But, more importantly, we serve the people who look to us for protection. We are not knights because we are better. We are knights because we are needed. Do you understand me, son?" Prince Francois nodded, relieved at the kindness in the final question. Perhaps this godlike being was a father after all. His. "Yes, father." The High King finally got down and knelt on one knee, so as to be at eye level with his son, and took the boy's hands in his own. They locked eyes again, but now there was no less strength. But the king's face was softer, a slight smile in his eyes. "Do you have any questions, son?" The prince shook his head, then tilted it. "One." The High King nodded to him calmly, encouraging him to speak. When you choose my wife, will you make sure she is pretty?" The High King controlled his reaction, a head full of romance and a mother's wishes. The boy needed a mentor, and High King John could think of only one man for the job. High King John's eyebrows raised and eyes closed for a second. When he reopened them again, he smiled properly. A true rarity. "If you remember this lesson, hold to your studies, heed your teachers, and act as you should." "I can make no promises, son, but I will try." The knightly orders are feudal, as ridiculous as that may seem to us today. Each knight owes fealty to a greater, be it a baron or other lord. Yet all of these lords and barons owe fealty to their High King or monarch. The names may differ amongst the varied knight worlds, but it does not matter if they are called chevaliers or knights. The same process and structure exists. Why, one might ask? Well, it is effective and simple. It may not be optimal and utterly ignores the human spirit, the wish to choose and to work oneself towards being greater than the place they were born into, but this does not change the fact that all of the regimes of the Imperium are indeed effective, if not particularly nice. Why? Because those regimes or regions that attempted more egalitarian methods of governance were destroyed, either by aliens known as Xenos or by internal division, often at the hands of the dark gods of chaos. Because of chaos, freedom is to be feared, and the idle hand often lends itself to their mischief. As such, the feudal lines of succession are incredibly important and form the baseline of the entire societal structure. Each human knows their role, their responsibilities, and how they should best achieve them. It may not be pretty, but it is a system that has worked throughout Old Knight and even before. It has stood the test of time due to its efficacy. As such, the training of the heir apparent is one of the most important things a knight or advisor can be tasked to accomplish. It does not always go to the highest-ranking knight or barons, as was done in wardships of the actual feudal period. Sometimes, if the High King is truly capable and powerful enough, or popular enough to ignore or smooth over any ruffled feathers, the training of the heir to his line will then go to the man or woman that the High King believes will best serve the strengths and weaknesses of said heir, his son or daughter. For of all the warriors in the line of combat, the most excellent, most solid, most stoic and stern must always be the High King, for it is his will that directs the entire order. Warriors of honor, paragons of their kind, will only follow those who are not just born to the purple, but who have earned their rank through action and ability. Thus the heir apparent must work twice or thrice as hard as any of his contemporaries. He or she must exemplify not just the chivalric code and warrior grit required to be a lord, but must epitomize the traits for which the house is known. They must be the living embodiment of the traditions and virtues extolled by the house. Also, as we have heard, the house is seen as a dynasty. Thus, marriage will be decided by the fathers and mothers of the children or youths involved. Some may be betrothed to silence a powerful but uppity baron. Some betrothals will be to solidify pacts of mutual respect and support amongst knightly orders, but none will be because of wish or want. The future of any heir is written by their parents, and none can gainsay the High King, not even his successor. In the case of this particular High King to be, Francois Heinrich, his father chose a gruff knight of low birth, but accomplished standing. A man who would beat him on the anvil of adversity, to wash away the complacency bred into him by a doting nursemaid. The days would be hard, but that would prepare him for lordship, for no day as a High King would or could ever be easy. Training Day. The day was long and sweltering. The sun beat down mercilessly. Prince Francois had a sheen of sweat on his topless upper body, taut muscles screaming under the strain of his exertions. A youth of 14, he had bulked up over the years. He had no choice. Sir Jörg Kruger, the Unrelenting, had seen to that. He had performed hours of flawless hotshot las rifle drills, then moved on to sword and spear training. He had always excelled at these even more than firearms. Sir Kruger had beaten him down time and again, but he rebounded and rolled fast, jumping to his feet and re-engaging with increasing alacrity with each passing day. Yet now, the prince's heart was not in it, and he had been knocked down thrice, once with what he would later confirm was a fractured rib or two. Unarmed combat. The prince despised it. After another backhand from Sir Kruger had sent the prince sprawling and spitting blood, he snapped. "What do I learn from this stuff?" the prince shouted. Sir Jörg Kruger sighed and went into the same old lesson, the one Prince Francois refused to absorb. "Because it is the bedrock of combat, both within or without your steed. Because you must be able to defend yourself, even when naked." Punching the arena sand and raising again, the prince barked at his mentor. "Why?" This time, the knight explained. He had never done so before, but today was a special day. Not that the prince knew it. "You think assassins stand on plinths and challenge their quarry? Nay, they strike from the darkness, right after you've enjoyed some lass, or when in your cups with Amasek. That is when they come. The armaments of many knights are spear and firepower, aye, but there is always power fist and crushing stamping foot. To be a knight is to know every way of war and exemplify their practice. And because, before you even see the inside of an armature, you will be going out to fight the local dangers." The prince gasped in surprise. "What?" "You heard me," retorted Sir Kruger. "Tomorrow, just thee and me, we hunt orc." The prince now looked at Sir Kruger like he was addled. "We've been told they were gone. Don't use the royal we on me, boy. You were informed thus, Mr. Pampered." Confused, Prince Francois shot back. But the history!" Sir Kruger smirked as he responded. "True enough. But the thing with orcs is, they come back." "We've never been invaded by greenskins," spat back the incredulous prince. "True again," said the knight, nodding sagely. "But someone found a cave, blew it open." "Orcs? After all this time?" offered the prince. "Worse. Spores. They floated away. This was 2 centuries ago, but ever since, we have had sporadic greenskin incursions from remote locations all across the planet." Prince Francois asked, "But the Royal Guard?" "Will trail us, I presume," began the knight. "But they'll be far too far back to give support in a surprise or ambush, unless it's a true warband we track down. But a score or less? Ha! No chance. We'll just have to make do." The baffled prince fought a trillion emotions, his face just dumbfounded. "All this just to prove a point, my mentor?" "No, oh pampered one. To find out if you have any mettle yet." On many night worlds, there are naturally occurring megafauna that are lethality itself, or other threats, perhaps not so large, more multitudinous. It is often why the night suits were acquired and maintained semi-religiously. Where the colony of humans alighted on a passive, pleasant world, there would be no need for these demi-titans. Thus, the worlds themselves formed the cultures that grew on them, as is always the case for humans. One might think that the ages of history would have led to the extermination of said species of the golden age of technology, or even more so, under the banner of the age of the Imperium, where any alien life was seen as vile and to be eradicated. But the Imperium could have made paradise worlds of every planet if they so chose, or so some say. They did not do this by the same token that the recruitment worlds of the Astartes, the Space Marines, are almost universally harsh places to live. Take Baal, for instance, the world of the Blood Angels. Does anyone truly believe that the angels could not have wiped away the adversity and cleansed the world? But they did not, despite it being the throne world of a Primarch no less. Because, like the Fremen or Sardaukar of Dune, on which the Marines are obviously based, it is the environment that forges the Force. The night worlds often cull their megafauna or other adversarial monster residents, but they permit a quantity to exist to use as training for their night aspirants and even their household guards to try their strength against. It is a fundamental part of not only their training regimes, but their culture and its ongoing existence. Adversity does not break the man, it makes him. This is what they believe in the grim darkness of the far future, and it is an axiom that has been proven time and time again. Yet chivalry and skill at arms are not all that an heir or lord can be expected to observe or know. He or she must also be a leader, not only in wartime, but for all times, places, and situations. who is who and why. Prince Francois stood to attention as a decorated knight entered the room, a seneschal no less. Baya the Brave. Even the prince knew of his deeds. This was an honor indeed. The bluff older man nodded to the Adepta Sororitas Sister Famulus and dismissed her with a curt shake of his head toward the door. She bobbed slightly and swept from the room, and he began. History lessons with the Sister Famulus will continue after I have discussed the Order. One day, if you are thorough, you may well lead House Heinrich. You must know what we are. The ranks and uses of our order is mimicked over many worlds. All are mirrored in many ways, so terminology may differ, but the truth remains plain. This is how we Quaestores designate and deploy. Still stood at attention, the boy responded. Sir Kruger and my father have tutored me in much. I am honored for your further tuition, Sir Baya. The man sniffed, but did not give the prince leave to be at ease, let alone to sit. Excellent. Then I will be brief and to the point. Raise your hand if anything sails over your pretty little locks. The prince stiffened at this rebuke, but did not react. Like everything else in his life these days, it was a test. Could he be goaded, enraged? Could others force him to react? Thus his response was controlled. Yes, Seneschal Baya. And thus the older man continued. The aspirant, you should know all about this, as you are swiftly approaching an end to this phase of your life. It is the boy who wishes to be a knight. It is training in discipline, war, etiquette, and survival. What is expected of him, and how he should perform at even the lowest grade of knight. The squire is also used to denote this station in some houses. Then, the knight apparent. He who has undergone the ritual of bonding, but has not been blooded in battle. This is where the true training for combat begins, where the knight apparent will learn how to ride his steed, to fly an armiger or helverin. If he is lucky, then he will be taken to battle, and then he can be blooded. Only when he has faced the furore of battle can he be considered a true knight. Even then, he will have to prove himself in every engagement, every act, every greeting or social setting. Being a knight is not just about combat and victory. It is about breeding, bearing, and honor. The actions of the one are reflected on the entire order, the knightly house. We do not take in nor maintain sluggards or scoundrels, no matter how adept they may be in the fray. The knight, the mainstay of our armies, the man or woman who stands against the darkness and refuses their base instincts to run. They ride armiger if low-born, or knight if it is earned, by deed or dint of blood. But all must be worthy of their suit of armour. Cowards and braggarts, no matter their birth or what runs through their veins, will never be seen in the battle lines if they are not worthy of the honour. None. You will respect all knights, no matter how high you may claim, even unto the throne of the High Kingship. For all knights have bled for their place. All have battled beyond hope of victory. Yet, by merely doing this, won through against insurmountable odds. You will respect them. Now to specific ranks amongst the higher grade of knight. Some houses have knight scions, those who are veteran knights and can lead if the baron or seneschal is either lost or absent. The preceptor, those who deal with the sacristans, sometimes performing high rituals of the order. The dolorous, a beast slayer. He finds the terrors amidst the swarms, or charges that which should not exist. The Ulan, a swift attack knight, keen to close with a foe and end it blade to blade. The Arbalister, longer-range support knights. His target prioritization must be superb, his aim true. The Orcteller, a champion as duelist of the formation, they who must find the champion of the enemy and slay them. All have their trials and tribulations. honor and duty. Now to the highest ranks, the seneschal, a war leader or bodyguard depending on the order. Some have seneschals as the right hand of the king. We do not. But those ranks will be replicated in other names across the galaxy. Be aware of the house you speak to before assuming the station of the knight you address. Honor is supported by etiquette. Never forget it. The barons, high nobles with bonded knights of their own. In a complicated engagement, they can take wings. In a campaign, they can act with their forces independently and accomplish that which the High King requires. The King's Guard, the bodyguard of the king, his fist, most commonly a baron or the heir apparent. He or she leads the vanguard and acts as the king's sword of righteousness in the most furious fighting. The herald, voice of the High King. He or she will maintain diplomatic relations, communicate orders to outside organizations in the fighting arms of the Imperium. On planet, they are toastmaster and arbiter of etiquette, master of judgment, the marshal of the order. They find and destroy enemies and traitors to the house. They maintain the honor in all our actions, on and off the battlefield. They are the king's legal retribution. The gatekeeper. He maintains our safety and preparedness. He creates and fortifies our castles and looks to the defense of home world. And finally, at the very top, as you should know, the High King, ruler of the order entire. His word is law, his deed is mighty. Where the king strikes, we follow. This is our hierarchy, our way. Many are like it, as I have said. Remember, to every household of knights, chapter of Space Marines or regiment of renown, honor is all. But not everyone perceives honor through the same lens. When anyone positions to strike us, remember our war cry. No hesitation, no mercy. You will now write down every word I have said and send it to me within the day. Should you miss any nuance, you will repeat the process until I deem it satisfactory. I did not warn you of this prerequisite before beginning for a good reason. What was it, Prince Francois? Because a baron or high king must remember every word that is said to him or around him. It reveals what is in the hearts of others. He must be aware and active at all points. This is expected at all times. Bernard Bear nodded and swept from the room. A simple aside. One cannot lead others if you do not know what you ask of them. An heir must act in every single role up to the lordship to better know the roles and responsibilities of those he commands. They must take every position in the line so they know what can be expected. They must fight under every circumstance possible to better prepare them for command. But the most dangerous battle that any aspirant must survive is not against the local fauna or enemies of the Imperium. It is against himself in the ritual of becoming. The night had come, the one that posed the most danger to the young prince, or any youth put in the same position. The ritual of becoming. The time of testing. For the aspirant would either prove their mettle or end their short life here and now. And this was no normal ritual. Oh no. The heir apparent was preparing to become not just a knight, but a scion of his house. Thus, it was no standard throne mechanicum that the prince would sit in. It was the throne of the house, the oldest and most potent of all. Prince Francois was marched with great pageantry to the doors of one of the most ancient rooms in the oldest segment of the house fortress. It was dark inside, and he went in alone. Approaching the one thing in the chamber, The prince was startled by lights appearing over it, highlighting the seat that spelt either his knighthood or his demise. He steeled himself and carefully turned, then sat. And the throne then extended mechadendrites that linked with his very brain. And it began. A struggle for supremacy, the boy against the ages. The memories of others engulfed him, their faces, their hopes, their dreams, but all through the lens of the throne. Visions of glory gained or hoped for, crushing defeats that near wiped the house away. The endless war against the orcs in ancient times, the Great Crusade, the heresy. Knight fought knight, brother slew brother. The myriad Xenos they had faced since. Beneath it all, the rage, the yearning, for battle and bloodshed. This was a throne that had witnessed all, the conflict seeping into its very soul. Prince Francois fought it. He had to, or it would overwhelm him. Not just here, while sitting linked to it, but on a fundamental level. If he broke now, he would die. But if he survived and let the throne poison his mind, he could become a tyrant. Then, as it progressed, things changed. The sounds of war, the thunder of gunfire, the squealing of metal being rent asunder. They became more distant, ever present, but suppressed. Then the voices, the previous aspirants who had passed away, and then the lords of legend, those who had passed the test and went on to greatness, his very forebears. He knew why none but royalty had been bonded with this throne. They were all here, names from history given form and voice before his very eyes. Well, his mind's eye, his brain understood the input as best it could, showing him visions. The line of his people all the way back to the earliest of days. Like the ship of Theseus, no part of this throne was now original to its form, but its function had not changed. Its memory was long. Over the hours of darkness, the prince experienced 1,000 battles, wrestled with 100 wills, more, until he latched on to the one personality who gave him strength. His own father was imprinted there, had himself endured this test. Even so, even with this help, it was close. His heart pounded so fast that it near exploded thrice during his trial. When the first light struck the tallest tower of the castle, Sir Bayer and the prince's old mentor, Sir Kruger, calmly, with trepidation, stalked inside. They saw the boy, his arms on the side of the throne. He was bent over, his long hair slick with sweat and obfuscating his face. At that point, they could not even discern if his chest moved with the automatic rhythmic pump of air going into his lungs. The two slowly padded closer. A voice broke the silence. It was one they recognized. Similar, but deeper, richer, more. "Tell the High King, I stand ready to serve at His Majesty's pleasure." Prince Francois raised his head and slowly got up to punctuate his statement. The usually taciturn Bayer practically gave a bunny hop of glee. The knight, Sir Kruger, took a step or two closer, his arms out. He caught the young prince as he toppled forward. "We will get you set, young man. Then you can tell him yourself." "Sir Knight," whispered the prince. "I, my prince." The first time he had ever called the boy that, because he was no longer a boy. "Send for the royal barber." "I, my prince." The young man then passed out. The ritual of binding is indeed dangerous. It is not as challenging as that faced by the pilots of the true god engines, the Titans, where a princeps must face an even stronger machine spirit than that of a knight. But even so, many aspirants die in the attempt to match their will against that of the throne. It is a rite of passage that is fundamental to the entire order. For any man or woman who has undergone this rite can be trusted to hold the line, for their will is adamant, their drive unassailable. They are warriors from that moment onwards. Nor will any be concerned if they are ever captured by an enemy, for no excruciation or torture of any kind will ever match your best that moment, that night, with the throne mechanicum. Even so, just because one is a knight does not mean that things are plain sailing, or the defeat cannot be hard. First Blood. "Glory! Glory to House Heinrich!" bellowed Sir Kruger when the prince had exited his armature. Prince Francois did not smile. He did not acknowledge the greeting. He stamped to an adjoining room. Sir Kruger followed him in silence, preparing for the next stage. The surprise engagement against the orcs had been hard. A standard sweep with his lance of armigers had suddenly turned into a desperate battle, one that had taken 3 of the 4, the prince being the only survivor when the last greenskins were slain. As soon as the doors were closed, Prince Francois rounded on his mentor. "Glory? For what? So many of us are dead out there. I couldn't save them." "You were never meant to, young man. They were aspirants also. One day you may rule. But here, now, you are nothing more than one blade amongst many. Respect those at your side, their decisions, their fate. They chose to die today." "Are you insane? They were butchered, but if we had withdrawn, gained more aid?" "No, knight. They were warriors who stood their ground. They could have fled. They did not. They chose death. But by this coin did they save thousands. If the orcs had broken out, they could have hit every hamlet from here to the sea. The enemy was stopped. Your brothers knew the price. They paid it gladly. Though they were barely beyond aspirants this day, they acted like knights. Never romanticize the moment, their sacrifice, but do not denigrate it. A dead man can win no battles. If we had brought up heavier true knights, this would not have cost any suits, any walkers, any thrones, any lives. A dead populace gives no ties to raise knight households. We are one. The lesser is defended by the greater, but the greater cannot exist without the lesser. I thought you understood this." The prince now looked down. "I know. I do. I know you do." The old knight softened. "The sting of loss is barbed indeed. Honor them now as you did in their lives. Remember them. Drink to their deeds and pass them on. Then retake your place in the line. Honor their sacrifice by being the best left standing. A boon to your house and people." The King's Council. The High King had returned. He had met with his son, and they had drank together. It was when the Amasek had flown for hours that the son finally opened up to his father, and instead the High King would respond. "The King's Council? Father, why do we need one? Our word is law. Our deeds show the way." The king took another drink, and then sat his glass down and fixed his son with a very pointed stare. "No man can do everything that is required to wage war. No man can hold it all in his head and see it objectively. No man can have the eyes of a hawk and a mole at the same time. What does that even mean? Ah, my son, it is simplicity itself. When you concentrate on the wider frame, you may miss the minutiae, and when you delve into detail, the reason for it all can be lost in the mindset of analysis. A good seneschal, barons, and other advisors must be chosen wisely. They must complement the strengths of the Lord and make up for shortcomings. Where a king is cautious, his advisors should be fire and thunder. Where the king is bold, the advisors must be chosen for being worrywarts and naysmiths. No man can be all things, so he chooses his advisors for different skills and perspectives. Only a fool surrounds himself with the like-minded. What value has advice if it always is bent to your own wishes? The honeyed words are sycophantic climbers or bosom buddies of your youth. They have destroyed more houses than any individual enemy. They are poison. A heady draught that intoxicates and leads to ruin. Nothing is more deadly than certainty. Nothing is more cruel. The prince was deeply drunk and responded without guile. How can I ever act if I am uncertain? His father leant back, sighed deeply. That is what courage is for, Francois. The over-intellectual are always drowned in the paralysis of seeing the myriad repercussions of their actions. It robs them of impetus. But the certain, those who see themselves as the righteous, are even more dangerous. They heed none, ignore all evidence that contradicts their chosen worldview or predetermined course of action. They are butchers incarnate, foolishness personified. The wise act knowing that they could be wrong, thus they can adapt as matters unfold. The brave act even when they are uncertain. They know that the future is what they forge of it. The prince shook his head, confused again. This is contradictory to all my learning of combat. Aye, the responsibility of lordship is heavy indeed. It means to be supple and strong, never weak or malleable, but self-auditing and flexible. The unbending blade will shatter or snap. The man who can be easily led will never truly lead. As High King, the final word in all things will be yours, so make your voice the last to speak. Always. War is not battle. Lordship is not a duel. A king must be constant, but never predictable. A king must be wrathful, but only with due cause. A king must be as prudent as they are powerful. A king must listen more than they lecture. He must be aware of the treachery and cunning in all men. Watch for it, plan for it, but never surrender to it. Never look for it where none exists. To be a king is to be a hero, father, son, and target. It is to walk amongst wolves but never fear them. For if you give in to fear, then paranoia will end your rule as swiftly as a blade across your sleeping throat. This is a lot to take in. I do not know if I can do this. Aye, said his father. It is a curse to be the son of a great man, even if I must say so myself. Worse, to follow the footsteps of a long line of great men. How will I do this, father? By remembering who you are. The blood of those great men resides in your very veins. The courage is built into your very genetic makeup. Find it, grow it, guard it. You can do this thing if you choose to do it. First Command. A bad situation, a rare occurrence, or so they said. But he knew the truth. It was he who gave the final order. Sir Kruger sat with the prince and passed him one of the many filled glasses of wine. So many had been set out in preparation of victory, yet the prince and his old mentor were all that were sat there. The rest had declined to follow him. They knew his pain. They would enter when Kruger indicated it. The prince needed his father, but he was distant. Sir Kruger would have to do. Behind the closed doors, Prince Francois dropped into a chair, ignoring the wine, and put his head into his hands. "We all lose," began Kruger dismissively. "Ha! Did I ever tell you how your father—" The prince cut across the older man. "I have dishonored my house, my name. In my first command, I ordered a withdrawal in the face of the enemy." The knight looked at the ceiling for a second, then sat across from the prince. "Would it have been better to have died down there? You got outmaneuvered. If we live, we learn. We never make the same mistake twice." Prince Francois groaned, then whispered, "I am unfit for command." "Only if you believe that. Only if you bullishly state you cannot and will not learn from your errors. The men, they must despise me." "Weak," barked the knight. "Is that what they think?" "No. It's what you're being right now." "You truly are a bastard. It's why you were given to me to watch over. Winkle out the weakness and step on it. And it appears I have failed." The young man ran his hand through his hair, took in a deep breath, then stood to his full height and straightened his jacket. The steel was back. "Thank you, Sir Knight. If this ever happens again, I will peel the skin off your back with a whip, boy." The young man deliberately took a glass from a tray and drank a gulp of wine, then placed it back calmly. He slowly looked to his teacher, hand hovering languidly near his sword hilt. "Be careful, Sir Knight. You address your prince." The knight winked at him and grinned, then got out of his chair and knelt head down and said, "Now that's more like it, sire." To be continued. And don't worry, in the next episode we shall see plenty of combat. I guarantee it, and look forward to seeing you there. Like, subscribe, tip if I've earned your bounty, and most importantly of all, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.